This is the Unstarving Musician podcast. I'm your host, Rabanzo. The podcast features conversations with me, indie music artists, and industry professionals, and it's all intended to help other indie music artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Testing, checking the mic. 1, 2, 3, mic check. Hey, this is Rabanzo. You knew that. Thanks for joining me for another episode. I'm honored to have you. Honored to be in your earbuds or on your speakers or whatever you're using. So, can I talk about the weather here in Panama at the beach? It's nice this afternoon. Or should I talk about the Delta variant? And what the hell is the Lambda variant? I didn't even know about this one until this afternoon. Or about how some of my gigging friends are torn, again, about performing out because of all these variants. Or maybe that rapper Nicki Minaj will go live on Instagram at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time Thursday, July 8th, as I am recording this, to share something in all caps. Very, very, very important. This according to a tweet she sent out on Tuesday this week. Or maybe the news that Beyond Meat launches meat-free chicken tenders in the U.S. I'm actually kind of excited about that last one. I love chicken. I get some organic chicken here. I might have talked about it before, but it is amazing. I've been to the farm. I know the owner of the farm. Very nice lady. Great place. You know, as long as you don't mind eating chickens. I know there's a lot of vegetarians listening to this, including, and I'm part-time, by the way, which you'll hear about in this episode, but including Roopa Mahadevan, my guest. Roopa is a leading Indian classical vocalist and crossover artist, and she's normally based in New York City, but when we spoke, she'd relocated to San Jose, California. She relocated for pandemic reasons, but she actually grew up in the South San Francisco Bay Area in San Jose, so it was an easy move, temporary or not, for her. And I normally have the recording date on these, but I screwed up my notes, so I'd have to go look at my calendar, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to finish telling you about Roopa, and then we'll get on to the conversation with me and Roopa. But she collaborates with artists in jazz, world music, and R&B/soul genres. She performs full-length Carnatic vocal concerts, which I believe is a bit niche. Carnatic. I hope I said that right. But she accompanies some of the world's leading South Asian dancers and choreographers. Man, I can't read my own notes. I have glasses. I wear them almost all the time. If you see me, you know this. We spoke about Roopa's, at the time, newish album called Roopa in 6 Yards, a Carnatic playlist by Roopa Mahadevan, and her desire to do more albums, particularly with her group Roopa in Flux, a crossover endeavor, and all the trepidations that come with doing something new and different like a crossover endeavor. We also chat about our mutual acquaintance with Aki Kumar, who has appeared on this podcast 3 times. Count them, 3 times. I'll put links in the show notes to those episodes. I was telling Roopa they're among the most listened to on the podcast, and talk about some of the reasons why I suspect they are, other than the fact that Aki's he's got fans, man. He's got supporters. He's got people. And he hustles. There's a bit of cutting room floor chit-chat at the very end of the episode between Roopa and I. So this is post-credits, so I hope you'll stick around for that. It's just chit-chat. It's nothing earth-changing, but I thought it was kind of cute. If you like Roopa, hang out for that. All right, here is me and Roopa Mahadevan. Okay, I'm ready. Are you?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay. So how long have you known Aki Kumar?
Aki, actually through a friend of a friend. I feel like we met in my mid-20s.
Wow.
Yeah, in the Bay Area.
When did you spend time in the Bay Area?
So I grew up here. I grew up in the Bay Area. I was born in San Jose Hospital, actually.
Wow.
Near town, yeah. And I went to school here and ended up going to college in the Bay Area, and then I went to India for a year or two to study music, and then I came back here And that's around the time I think I met Aki, if I'm right. If I'm remembering it right. And then I went to New York, and so then that's where I spent another like almost 10 years. And now because of COVID, I'm kind of back here. But
Okay, yeah, I was prepared to that you were in New York City or New York now. So cool. Well, let's see. My wife and I were in the San Jose area from 99 to 2016.
wow,
So I'm sorry we never got to meet.
I know. Well, 99, I was in what, high school at the time. So
We
I
had
was
just moved
around.
there. Yeah, we had just moved there, and I kind of took about at least a year off of playing music, and then someone drugged me out to JJ's Blues Bar to meet.
Hmm.
Do you know Laura Price by chance,
I
the
don't, and I
singer?
don't know the blues scene here that well, because I was kind of like not of age yet. I think when these
Sure. Yeah.
were,
Well, she was around a long time. She was kind of a staple in the Bay Area, but she relocated to Austin not too long ago. But anyway,
right.
that was all just to say that I had a short time where I had stopped playing because I'm trying to get, I just was being lazy for a while, and then I get to know all these new people, and eventually met Aki. I
Yeah.
love that you call him Aki because I'm Latin, as you may have gathered from my name, and so it sounds like here, and I always call him Aki because that's the way everyone always says his name to me, Aki.
I mean, his actual name was like Akarsha, right? I think his
That's right.
Indian Akarsha, yeah.
That's right. Wow. So that's a little bit of a surprise to me then. You're in the Bay Area and you grew up there. That's pretty cool. We
Yeah.
love that area. It's a little expensive now, but
I know. I
oh,
know.
okay. Here comes my first attempt at one that I don't think would have been easy for me to look up pronunciation for because it's a person's name, but let me just try and you can correct me. Bijayini Satpathy?
Yeah, pretty good.
Close.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
You're
Vijay.
very excited about your work with her.
Yeah, it's very recent, and she's, one of the greatest kind of, living sort of masters, practitioners of this dance form called Odissi, which is from the eastern part of India. And the dance world, sort of the Western dance world, has really shed a lot of spotlight on her and is very kind of moved by her dance. And so, the New York Times and the New Yorker, all of them have kind of hailed her as one of the greatest dancers in the world. And she's actually has premiered her first sort of choreography to date. At the Baryshnikov Arts Center. And so that's up right now, actually, until the 15th. I think Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern or something. It disappears. But I was very fortunate to have been able to sing for her for that. And hopefully, with COVID, hopefully with the vaccines doing their thing and us achieving some kind of herd immunity over time, we'll be able to tour. But that was the idea that she had, was to tour in the U.S. with U.S. based musicians. So that was very exciting for me to receive a call from her
Bet.
asking me to sing for her. So that was a big honor. Yeah.
Well, I did not know who she was until I started looking at your work, and she's in the brief looking that I did. She's clearly quite remarkable in dance, and she's really fun to look at too.
Mhm.
Just to see her face,
Yeah.
and yeah, just looks very emotive in what she does. So congratulations on that. I hope that you get to tour. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. I think they're talking about winter or spring 2022 right now. So
Sure. Yep.
yeah.
Fingers crossed. You're one of the more diverse artists I've spoken with in terms of the different styles that you have delved into. And for those listening, they include, this is not all encompassing, but
Mhm.
uh, influences and commingling with jazz, flamenco, world music, R&B, soul, and then all these things are Carnatic vocal. Did I say that right? This
Yeah. That's
is
my primary training. Yeah.
yeah, your primary training. So are the things outside of the Carnatic vocal, are they pretty recent or just things you've kind of always been involved in and have more recently um, just intertwined with your recordings?
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I think I want to respect the craft and the history of every sort of tradition that I participate in. And so for that reason, I identify primarily as a Carnatic artist because that's really where the bulk of my training has been, and my performance kind of experience has been born out of that. But Carnatic music is very unique because it's kind of equal parts composition or songs and equal parts improvisation. And over the course of training in Carnatic music, you really learn to become kind of facile, dexterous with playing with melodies, a lot of complex melodies and shapes through the Indian raga system, as well as being able to groove rhythmically with all kinds of complex rhythmic shapes. So I think it set me up well to be able to kind of have the confidence to try out other genres of music, and to kind of listen to them with maybe a unique perspective than someone else would. But that said, I would never call myself a jazz vocalist because I have not done that training. I've not kind of immersed myself in the work of the masters, and but I do work with a lot of folks who have had jazz training, and there are so many similarities, I think, in the way we think about improvisation and textures and kind of active listening, mindful collaboration, things like that. I've learned a lot from the kind of creative music scene in New York, about how powerful it can be when musicians improvise on stage, no matter what vantage point they're coming from. And so that's been a really fun experience for me, is to have kind of more of a musical conversation with other artists. And since I grew up in the States, I actually grew up listening to a lot of non-Carnatic music, right? So I idolize, Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey and Jill Scott. And so that genre in particular, kind of the neo soul, R&B, soul, Motown, going back to, Aretha, and those genres speak to me. I think there's something about the melisma and the wailing in the voice and the sense of abandon, and the richness, right, of the shapes that they create with their voice, that I think it just caught my ear growing up, and it's been something I've tried to mimic for better or worse, but trying to do it a bit more thoughtfully now as I collaborate with other artists and things like that. So flamenco came about because I was connected to this flamenco guitarist, and I was singing an Indian rock, and he said, that sounds so much like kind of some of the melodies we use. And so we worked together on an arrangement for a song where we both felt at home, in a sense, through a new vocabulary, right? Which is so important when you do crossover. It's not about 1 + 2 is 3. It's actually you're creating a new vocabulary. Math doesn't even work there. It's kind of a union, right? So New York has been fun for me because I've met so many different types of artists. Bulgarian choir and a choir we collaborated, because they're very harmony based, and Indian music is not. So they're all about layering, and but the kinds of notes that they choose, you could say, arguably fall in the minor category, which is such a crude way of talking about it from the Western perspective. But so many of the notes that they play with overlap with ours, and even the shapes and the trills, the vocal trills, the oscillations, also the way they conjure up and use that to express emotion, was very recognizable to us as Carnatic singers in the choir. So we that was a starting point for us to start to kind of come up with something together. So
wow, fascinating. There, I think, in the Bay Area, in the North Bay and Oakland, there are members of a Bulgarian, I believe, Bulgarian choir. One of them has been on the podcast, and it was my first introduction to the style of music, and yes, the vocal layers that you talk about, and the one that I spoke to has roots in like kind of 90s alternative pop kind of music. And then found her way into this group that has a big nonprofit there. I'm forgetting their name. I don't know if you're aware of them, but maybe
someone else has told me about a group in Bulgaria. Yes, that does Bulgarian music, or kind of Balkan music more broadly in Berkeley. Are they attached to the university?
Maybe, and maybe just by alumni being in the group. But I'm going to send you, when we're done, I'm going to send you their info in case you just want to check them out or whatever. That seems. Because of all those things you were describing, and having watched a little bit of what you did with a choir or singing group recently, a collaborative thing, maybe would be interesting for you. So
no, thank you.
How long has it been since the title? Tell me if I got the title right. It's Roopa in 6 Yards, a Carnatic playlist by you, Rupa. How long has that been out?
That released in December of 2019.
Okay.
So just a few months before the pandemic.
Mm,
Um, but I wanted, to that was pretty much my debut kind of album, so to speak. I had done a lot of kind of guest appearances on other people's albums and things like that, but I hadn't really properly recorded, my singing because so much of my training is in kind of service of live shows, of live concerts. And so
okay.
I've done a number of live solo concerts, but actually going into the studio and putting it down, right, with like good microphones and soundproofing and things like this, I just hadn't done. And so I felt like I think the future of my sound is going to be more Rupa in flux, which is kind of a crossover
Hmm.
identity. But I really wanted my first kind of formally released music to reflect the love I have of the Carnatic tradition and its richness. So I said Rupa in 6 yards because 6 yards is the length of a sari.
Okay.
So which is the kind of the traditional, outfit for women, for many women, in not all, but in India. And so for me, the ritual of putting that on is kind of what gets me into my Carnatic state of mind. So there's a performance to that too of putting that outfit on and then feeling ready to kind of channel kind of the history of these ragas and these compositions. And so that's why I said this is sort of an avatar of me that's Rupa in 6 yards, and that's the voice you're hearing. And it's a Carnatic album, so it's me, a brilliant violinist named Anjana Swaminathan, and a brilliant mridangam player, which is a two-headed percussion instrument. His name is Rajesh Srinivasan, and so we have, I think, about 6 or 7 tracks that are from the Carnatic repertoire,
It's
and they're just compositions. They're just songs. There's no
yeah,
improv. Yeah.
yeah, lovely recordings. What I've heard thus far. So it sounds like you do have plans to do more albums, then, yes?
I would like to, yes. I started this group called Rupa Influx around 2017, and we
Hmm.
had a really serendipitous opportunity to perform in India. And so, actually, the first place I performed that band was just directly in India, as opposed to here, and um, had some amazing musicians on that tour with me. Guy Mintis being one of them, and he was kind of the chief arranger for a lot of the compositions. He's an Israeli pianist, but who's also trained in like maqam, modal music, and and jazz at Manhattan School of Music. And so, kind of met him through the music scene in New York, and we had a successful tour in India, and all these people were like, when's your next concert? Do you have an album? And I was like, oh man, I need to get on top of this. Like, so there's still no album, but I think this year during the pandemic will be when I have a chance to actually start to do more original writing and arranging, to kind of build off the first set of repertoire that we developed.
So these guys that work with you in Rupa and Flux will be the core of the at least the next album.
Yeah, and it's kind of a revolving door, right? Just because I mean, I'm sure the struggles of touring and availability, and especially in the early stages of having an ensemble, you can't rely on everyone being available all the time. And so I've had many pianists, many percussionists, and many violinists actually. So the band is basically piano, drum kit. It's both drum kit and mridangam, so it's like a hybrid setup, and then a violin. But I had a guest artist who she played piano. She's in Oakland actually. She plays piano and flute, right? Her name's Erica, and so we've had some guest performers and things like this. But yeah, it's been somewhat of a revolving door just based on availability of folks and things like that. So I like that actually. It breathes a lot of energy into the material, right? Because so much of it is improvised. So
Hmm.
you just hear different perspectives, and that texturizes kind of the music. But yeah, at least I think in this coming year I want to get the arrangements down, and then we'll see about who's actually available to play them and bring them to life. But
Yeah. Do you anticipate that you're gonna dive a little deeper, assuming you do more than one album with this configuration in mind? Do you think you'll find yourself diving deeper and deeper into these other genres that you've begun to delve into?
yeah, that's what I want to do. I mean, I think that the challenges for me, honestly, is language because I'm used to singing not in English.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, and And the kinds of singing I do requires long vowels, so to be able to extend on a note or to do a lot of embellishment and things like that. So I find English challenging because it is so consonant heavy. So a lot of closing of the mouth, a lot of,
That's
yeah. So I have to get used to actually being able to deliver some of my musical ideas in an authentic way while singing in English, which is funny because when I do a cover, right? If I'm doing an Aretha cover, I'm extremely comfortable in English, but I'm using her words. I'm thinking about the energy, the emotion she's putting behind those lyrics. So what would it be for me to kind of sing in English, but kind of in a musical way that also makes sense to me? So that's the project, is really figuring
mm,
out a new. And so maybe it's a mix of solfa syllables, because solfege, we use a lot of solfege in Indian music. It's not do re mi, it's a different set of syllables, but maybe it's a mix of that, right, with ahs and a few English words. Or maybe it's me speaking in English and then going into some improvised raga melody and coming back. So these are the things. And there are many artists who do this, like Jill Scott is someone who's brilliant at this.
mm,
um, so I think I want to take my time to get that right.
yeah.
But yeah.
And sounds like all the wonderful training you've had is a bit of a curse in this particular instance, because I was listening to break down how this is going to have to work, and I wanted to say, well, you're thinking about it too much.
You're
I,
probably right.
well, listen to this. Is kind of funny. I have a friend here. I live in Panama, and I have a friend here who's from Chile, and she speaks beautiful Spanish, and she's learning English. She's pretty good. She can have a conversation, but when we get together, my wife and I, with her husband, we'll speak some Spanish, but mostly we're speaking in English, and she's the one who's like trying hard to follow along. And I'm very conscious. We're pretty conscious of trying to help her out, but we decided that we would do something I wanted to do forever with a fluent Spanish speaker, because my Spanish is, some would call me fluent, but like there are a lot of things I can't really talk about in Spanish very competently, and
Mm.
to understand the local Panamanians is very challenging. But we decided we would get together weekly, or as much as we could, to just chat for an hour in both English and Spanish, and learn from one another. And one of the things I told her was, look, don't, this is my wife's curse. She's as she was taking Spanish when we got here, they're in a book and they're talking a lot about grammar. And I told my friend Dagny, I said, maybe it would probably be better for you to forget about the grammar that you're trying so hard to learn, and just think about getting your point across.
Mm.
And so anyway, I'm using this sort of as analogously as what I was hearing you say. I'm like, well, wow, it sounds like you're thinking about it too much. You just kind of need to get your emotive point across, I guess. But you are clearly, I want to say, very well trained in your art, and or thoroughly, extensively trained in your art. And so uh, it's second nature for you to look at things that way. So I understand at the same time.
No, thank you for that, because I think that's true. And I think at the moment of creation, when it's right, when you're in flow, it's not at all an analytical endeavor, right? It's just you're just being at that point. Um, I think the challenging thing for me is when I start to think about audience and who is receiving the music. And
Mm.
I like, I mean, I'm curious, actually. I mean, it's your show, so it's not my place to ask you a question, but I I wonder, like, when you heard 6 yards, for example, when you're hearing music not in English or not in a language that you know or can understand, what does that do for you? Because I think there are some people for whom I think they're melody people, they're feel people. They don't need to know the words. And there's other friends of mine who listen to songs and like only know the words, and that for them it's poetry. It's more than it is music. I also know there are a lot of people in South Asians who don't actually relate to Carnatic music because, in a way, India has produced so much, music that's like Bollywood, for example, that takes kind of Western melodies and puts Indian lyrics on top of Western instrumentation and melodies, and that's more their vibe.
Hmm.
So, and a lot of this, ultimately is about attention span too, and your temperament and things like this. But I guess I want to think carefully, maybe, about who I'm trying to reach with the music, and if me singing uh, only in Carnatic is actually shutting people out. Ultimately, I can only be myself. But anyways, I'm curious what you get out of music when you don't necessarily understand lyrics.
Yeah, well, I will listen to a song so many times before I start to catch the lyrics because I listen to melody a lot, and that's what I listen to. And so I'm predominantly in, if I can just frame it in the world of pop music and rock music, I love to listen to instrumentation, both instruments and the instrumentation of vocal melody. So when I heard your music, and it's a genre that only maybe barely been exposed to on a periphery type basis. So it was very, it was beautiful to listen to, and very interesting because it's so new. And then there's some of the actual instruments that are happening, especially when I can watch the video. I'm like, wow, listen to that violin. So for me, that's what I heard. And I think it's so wise that you're giving this thought ahead of time. Who is it that I'm trying to reach, and who do I not want to isolate? But at the same time, it made me, here I am like trying to give you something to think about again. But it made me think of this thing that is said in marketing a lot, is that you're just never going to be able to catch everyone. So you'll have to figure out what works for you and
Yeah.
run with that. Yeah, for sure.
No, I'll remember that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you have such a, this beautiful feel and level of comfort in what you do and are most confident in doing. But seeing a little bit of what you do in these other genres, you clearly have this level of confidence for experimentation as well. So this, what you're thinking about now, sounds maybe like the biggest thing you will ever do to date. But I just say, if it feels good, I know you got that you're going to have this kind of technical critique, which is normal for you because of all the training and your great ear that you have, and there's no escaping that. But at the same time, I guess, yeah, it's going to be wonderful for you. You're going to have to discover what's working.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think no, you're totally on it. Everything you said is absolutely accurate. And social media has been such a funny thing because like I think yeah, I see I'm a bit more reticent generally to share on social media. I'm very
I'm with you.
yeah, like I actually find that it's great for introverts. I find more introverts sharing on social media than me. Ironically, I like
Yeah.
get me in a room and I'll talk. But there's something about the performance of the static image that's supposed to tell you something about me. The hey, it feels fake. It just feels fake. And I know there's so many consultants out there that'll tell you no, it's about being your authentic self, blah blah blah. But like still I have not exactly found my, my sweet spot there. But I only mention it to say that like I think where it is useful is you put music out there and it gives you a sense of like who's into it or what it does for people. And I think
Mm.
if you sit in the margins of genres and stuff, that can be helpful, right? Because there isn't already an audience. Like, for example, for Carnatic music, the listeners in the States are there, but they're mostly in suburbs and they're mostly in these like very narrow Indian communities. Um,
Mm.
and honestly, they're not purchasers of music, like they'll so and they're not and they don't necessarily rely on like a label or Spotify or something to introduce them to new artists, right? They kind of are in the scene, they know who the artists are, and that's kind of that's how they go about it. So here I am kind of coming out of this very more narrow listening community and patron community. But then I also want to reach people like me who grew up here
Sure.
and who have a very diverse kind of palette and who do look to Spotify, right, to tell me who the new hottest new artist is or whatever. So I think it's also like the commercial worlds in which I'm in, or the art institutions that like would know what I mean. That's why I think Bajoni Satpathy is such a beautiful story, because she's someone who is so entrenched in her craft and yet has been, and not to center, I'm not trying to center, like white Western institutions and say that should be it. But the fact that I think she's being appreciated for the specificity of her work, for the nicheness of her work. I think that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is like the Aki Kumar syndrome. Same thing with him crossing from doing this Bollywood blues thing, like
Yeah.
talk about niche.
Yeah.
So wow, that's all very exciting. I hope that we'll get to speak again so I can hear what you're experiencing and what you're learning from it all. I want to close with a question, and I'm going a little bit backwards from what I thought I would, the order in which I thought I would ask this, because I thought I would ask you right up front. But did Aki happen to mention that he recommended I, look into you, or was it
No.
okay?
Uh, I don't know. I think I saw you in my Instagram.
Yeah, I was probably like after he told me who you were. So the story is this. I thought you might find it amusing, but maybe also there will be something useful here, because I was thinking about, I don't know if you do many podcasts, but this might be interesting for you to know. Well, as a podcaster who's in this niche that I'm in here with the independent musician, Aki's episode has been very, maybe the most listened to, or one of the most listened to episodes I've had. And I was like, look at that. Well, something happened though. He's been on like 3 times, but all of his episodes are always well listened to. Something else happened in the podcasting world, and that is that Ghana network, in an aggregator for audio, and I guess maybe just podcasting, I'm not sure, from India, became available as a destination for podcasters in the United States and wherever. And I thought, oh wow, I've just kind of been looking at back episodes and thinking, I should feature these ones that have been listened to a lot. These are kind of a great best of. And I'm looking at Aki's and I go, man, I should ask him if he knows other Indian artists that I could check out, just to see what happens if I put another one on. I'll never know how much of it is this Ghana thing, or if there's this kind of craving, in the podcasting world for Indian pop music of some sort. So anyway, yes, he recommended you. I look into you, and there was one other person. And yeah, I love your work. I don't remember who this other person was now, but I'll find it now. But I love your work. And yeah, I'm sure it was, you saw me on Instagram, because I was looking at you. And whenever I'm thinking about maybe I'm going to see if I can get someone on the podcast, I go follow you and I start looking at your other stuff. So great work, man. I'm very impressed and delighted that we got to speak today.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. You're in Panama right now?
Yeah, my wife and I moved from San Jose to Panama in 2016. So we're in a beach community. We live in a beach community in an area, a city called San Carlos. The sort of popular expat community that people know about is called Coronado. Yeah. And yeah, it's lovely out here.
There with my family in 2019 May.
You were here?
And yeah, I came with my parents. My mom had like a work meeting in Costa Rica, and my dad is an engineer, a civil engineer, and he really has been wanting to go to the canal to see the locks technology and the phenomenon of that. So we did a family trip.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were in Panama City, but it was we had such a great time. I wish, if I had known you then, we could have maybe made a trip out to the beach side.
For sure. Maybe another time. My wife and I definitely will make our way back to San Jose at some point when travel's a little more comfortable, because we have a lot of friends there, and maybe I'll catch you, there. I know you probably are going back to New York City at some point, but yeah, it would be lovely to catch you there.
Yeah, tours have been indefinitely kind of postponed, so I'm just now starting to get a sense of when the activity is going to pick up again.
Yeah. Well, Roopa, thank you for spending time with me today, and I'll definitely stay in touch.
Thank you, Roberto. This was great.
Are you a musician or creator looking to get your ideas out to a new audience? Have you been wanting to create a podcast but a little lost as to where to start? Check out Podcast Startup, powered by the Unstarving Musician. It's a course I've designed to give you the know-how, tools, and resources to create and market a sustainable podcast like the Unstarving Musician. Podcasting has opened many channels for my own creativity, and I'd love for you to experience the same. To learn more, go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup, or the show notes for this episode. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the easiest all-in-one professional website platform for musicians and bands. 2 things that will help ensure you're in control of your music business and your fan-based community are a website and an email list. Bandzoogle can help you do both. Plus, a solid website makes you look legitimate. Serious musicians, singers, songwriters, composers, and performers know this to be true. If you don't yet have your own website, check out Bandzoogle. It was created by musicians for musicians. I use it and I love it. It's as easy to use gets, and you don't have to worry about plugin updates and security patches. Bandzoogle takes care of all that for you. The features and support are both incredible. See for yourself. Go to bandzoogle.com to start a 30-day free trial and use the promo code ROBONZO to get 15% off your first year. Plans start at just $8.29 a month. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to start your free trial today. Did you know you can help other independent artists find this podcast by subscribing on Apple Podcast or wherever you are listening to your podcast these days? It really does help, so I hope you will consider it. The Unstarving Musician podcast is made possible through the support and generosity of listeners like you. One of the easiest ways to support the podcast, if you're a musician, is to join the Unstarving Musician community, which you can do at, you guessed it, unstarvingmusician.com. In joining the community, you get tips and insights you can use in your music journey that comes not only from me and my years of experience, but also from the hundreds of other musicians that I speak to as part of the Unstarving Musician project and podcast. Plus, you'll get a free copy of my Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs ebook, the official version, and that's all for free just for being part of the community. You can learn about other ways of offering support by visiting the Unstarving Musician crowd sponsor page at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music fans. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love. There were lots of things I was having to look up pronunciation for this afternoon in preparation for our call. What you drinking there, tea?
Yep, this peach. I bought this like country peach or whatever because it had like all these ratings on Amazon, and then it's not that good. Like I was surprised. Now I'm realizing there's a middle line where if everyone swears by it, then it's like it's appealing to like, you know, it's not that good. But if like I think like 1,000 or less like it, then it's something like that.
It could be something that interests you. I get that. I have. Yeah. Do you have these friends that recommend restaurants, then you know you do not like the same restaurants they do, so you know not to try that one?
See, I'm vegetarian, so in a way, like my criteria are so different. I need veggie options, you know.
Well, you're maybe gonna laugh at me, but I'm part-time. My wife is vegetarian. She does eat eggs and dairy, but nothing, no living anything else.
Same. I'm the same way. I do eggs, I do dairy, I don't do like fish or chicken or any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't either. I do, but sometimes. So I say I'm part-time vegetarian because she does most of our meal planning, so I can get away with it.
I love that. Part-time.